The future is frozen, or at least it will be if Dippin Dots has its way. This sweet sci-fi treat may be seen as a bit of summer fun, but the scientific innovations that created and sustained it are still recognized today as major breakthroughs in food and medical tech. So, how were Dippin Dots made? And how will they still be benefiting us for years? We'll answer all that and more in a flash. Flash freeze, that is, because today we're dipping into some ice-cold history and revealing how a breakthrough in animal feed gave us Dippin Dots. The tasty tale of Dippin Dots begins sometime in the 1970s, near Grand Chain, Illinois. There, a good old American boy named Kurt Jones toiled away on his family farm. He tilled the land, baled hay, and most importantly, learned to hand-churn cream.
We don't have a cow. We have a bull.
While it was a noble life, it wasn't one you'd necessarily expect to result in serious scientific or technological advancements. But Jones was always a bit of an overachiever. Outside of being a family farmhand, Jones also played baseball and basketball for his high school teams. He was a member of his college's 4-H club, and while studying for his master's degree in microbiology, he taught inmates at the Shawnee Correctional Facility how to produce ethanol using the building's in-house production plant. In case you haven't sat in chemistry class for a while, ethanol is a highly volatile and flammable chemical compound, which also serves as the active ingredient for alcohol. So, it may seem like a weird choice to produce in a prison, but it can also be used as a fuel source and as a way to keep the temperature of vessels below the freezing point of water. That last part being the key. See, Jones specialized in cryogenics, which is a brand of physics that focuses on the behaviors of chemicals at very low temperatures. Upon graduating in 1987, Jones would put that specialty to use as a researcher at Alltech Biotechnologies, a Kentucky-based company specializing in animal agriculture. And it would be here, at this biotech company, that he would make his famous food-altering discovery. Because of his farming background, Jones was keenly interested in the inner workings of cows. Whatever gets you out of bed in the morning, we're not going to judge. He wanted to find a way to improve the digestion of cattle by applying his knowledge of cryogenics to the bacterial cultures found in cow food and their stomachs. And during one of his many experiments, which he conducted in his own garage, he used liquid nitrogen to flash freeze cattle feed at a cool -320 degrees Fahrenheit. The result was that the feed formed itself into small frozen pellets. If you're wondering how turning their feed into small frozen pellets helps cow digestion, the answer is it doesn't. At all. But it did make packaging the feed more efficient. It also expedited the freezing process, and, in our humble opinion, looked pretty cool. Thanks to his family ties to dairy and cream, Jones wondered whether this process might have a similar effect on ice cream. And after what we would imagine to be the most delicious series of experiments ever, he found that it did. And the best part? It tasted lighter, colder, and airier than regular ice cream, while still being flavorful and creamy. It was a blast of cool and a burst of flavor. It was the ice cream of the future. Or at least, that's what the marketing would claim in the coming years.
Dippin' Dots rock. Dippin' Dots, ice cream of the future.
Jones saw potential in this little experiment, and he wanted to strike while the ice cream was cold. He quit his job in 1988, just 1 year after being hired on as a researcher for Alltech Biotechnologies, and opened up an ice cream shop with his wife in Lexington, Kentucky. The cows would have to settle for their meager, unimproved digestion. Jones had bigger, cooler, ice creamier dreams now. He dubbed his new storefront the Yogurt Shop, and it closed almost immediately. We're not marketing experts, but we think maybe it was because people didn't want to eat something called a yoglet, which sounds like a rejected suggestion for what to name the Mogwai in Gremlins. A lot of people would have given up after such a quick and complete failure, but Jones wasn't a lot of people. So over Christmas of that year, he and his wife brainstormed a new business plan. And the first item of business on that plan was a new name. The one they settled on was, of course, Dippin Dots. Why? Well, because Jones dipped the ice cream into liquid nitrogen, so they formed dots. Pretty obvious, really. Not sure why that wasn't the first name they came up with. The next problem the Jones family had to contend with was the fact that their ice cream of the future was a little too advanced for most supermarkets and corner stores to keep stocked. Because of the nature of how Dippin' Dots was made, a standard freezer couldn't stay cold enough to keep them from melting. They needed dedicated storage, which could maintain a temperature of or below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, which wasn't impossible, but required more space than your average supermarket had to spare. So instead of focusing on the home market, the Jones family spun Dippin' Dots to be less of a food and more of an event. It was something you could only experience at select locations like malls, museums, stadiums, theme parks, and zoos, which not so coincidentally had the space and infrastructure to house Dippin' Dots. This new direction served the Jones family well, and in 1989, they would begin serving Dippin' Dots to Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee, the first amusement park to offer the futuristic dessert for public consumption. From there, Dippin' Dots began to dot the map at various locations across America. People, and especially children, yearned for this novelty little treat. Its limited availability and exclusivity made it that much more special in the eyes of theme park enthusiasts or museum patrons. But words like exclusive and special are really only selling points when you have no competition. And since Dippin' Dots were quickly becoming a rising star in the frozen dessert business,
Emily,
What are Dippin' Dots?
Dippin' Dots.
Kurt Jones knew there would be copycats, or maybe copy cows in this instance. You know, because of the ice cream and milk, so, oh, never mind. To protect his precious pellets, Jones patented Dippin' Dots in 1992, and 3 years later, Dippin' Dots opened a brand new production facility in Paducah, Kentucky, to meet the ever-growing demands of the ice cream-loving public. That same year, Japan became the first international licensee of the brand and ice cream making method, lending further legitimacy to the claim that Dippin' Dots really was the ice cream of the future, as Japan was and still is seen as a world leader in technological advancements at the time. Then in 1996, the Dots had to defend themselves in court. The Dippin' Dots company sued their main competitor, a dessert called Mini Melts, which came out in 1996, for infringing on their 1992 patent. And to be fair to Dippin' Dots, Mini Melts really aren't subtle about where they got their inspiration from. The company uses the same flash freezing method with liquid nitrogen to produce their bead-shaped sweet, but they claim to use a richer form of ice cream with 14% butterfat for a better flavor. Despite the obvious similarities, Mini Melts managed to keep themselves and their frozen dessert out of hot water. The Patent and Trademark Office ruled that the process of making ice cream was obvious in a legal sense, and therefore could not be proprietary. Dippin' Dots could not claim ownership, regardless of their patent, and so Mini Melts were allowed to ride the company's coattails. That being said, obvious in a legal sense isn't necessarily obvious in a colloquial sense, which probably has you wondering exactly how obvious the process really was. Well, obviously, we're about to explain. Dippin' Dots and other beaded ice creams like it are created through a method called cryogenic encapsulation. Using a pipette, which is basically a fancy syringe, tiny droplets of your substance of choice are applied to a bath of liquid nitrogen, which instantly freezes the substance at -320 degrees Fahrenheit. That substance could be anything from cattle feed to ice cream. And in the case of Dippin' Dots and its competitors, they use the latter, we assume. Milk, sugar, flavoring, and other ingredients are mixed together and then dripped into a chamber of frigid liquid nitrogen, where it instantly enmeshes with the chemical to form little round balls of deliciousness. Pretty cool, huh? Despite this sounding like a science experiment, the resulting liquid nitrogen ice cream is perfectly safe to eat, and it even has benefits over traditional ice cream. One of those benefits is the cream part of ice cream. Believe it or not, calling Dippin' Dots creamier wasn't just marketing spin. It had scientific backing. Because the dessert freezes instantly, fewer ice crystals are formed, which means it retains more cream without being diluted with water, provided you can then keep it cold enough so it doesn't start to thaw, which, as it turns out, is a very involved process. And that's where the company's cold chain comes into play. Cold chain sounds like the name of a band Chris Martin fronted in the 2000s, but it's actually a manufacturing term, which companies use to refer to their process of ensuring their cold and frozen food products don't heat up by the time they get to their destination. Since Dippin Dots has a unique freezing method and a lower required resting temperature than can be provided by most freezers, they had to come up with some innovative ways to keep the Dippin Dots from becoming, well, mini melts. The chain starts at the production facility. After the dots are removed from the liquid nitrogen chamber, they're moved into a specially created freezer. The freezer must be kept at or below -40 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's made with doors that open from the top, which helps to keep heat out of the area. Then, once the dots are inspected and quality standards have been assured, they're moved to smaller disposable vessels, which were also made especially for the dessert. These vessels are shaped like pizza boxes and packed with dry ice, which itself sits at around -109 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the perfect cooling agent for Dippin Dots. These vessels are then packed onto trucks which travel across the country, but not before Dippin Dots has charted their course and planned around any exceedingly hot weather events. And in the rare instance where a truck is delayed or otherwise finds itself heating up, Dippin Dots will hire a third-party company to come rescue the ice cream with additional dry ice. Of course, once the Dippin Dots reach their destination, they still need to be stored. And luckily, the company sells their own ultra-low temperature freezers to licensees and franchisees all across the globe. So they truly thought of everything to keep their ice cream safe. But what they didn't consider was how their cold chain might keep millions of people safe too. During the height of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020 and 2021, scientists and medical professionals were struggling to find fast and reliable ways to transport vaccines across the globe. These vaccines needed to be stored cold. Very cold. Well, below what a standard freezer could provide. Not unlike a certain brand of ice cream that has the same initials as Daredevil. It's widely believed that the American government, along with the various forces behind the vaccines, looked to Dippin Dots and their cold chain for inspiration on how to keep things cool, using similarly shaped vessels packed with dry ice to store and distribute the vaccine. And once they get to their destination, well, it's been confirmed that some pharmacies and hospitals reached out to Dippin Dots to rent or purchase their freezers to keep the vaccine at an ideal temperature over long periods. But despite these science-y successes in the medical field, and all the lives Dippin Dots tech has helped save, it hasn't always been smooth sailing for the Frosty brand. On November 4th, 2011, Dippin Dots filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Long story short, they'd failed to reach a loan agreement with their lender, Region Banks, over a year before, and the bank finally foreclosed on them. With American mall culture dead and gone, and the lingering effects of the 2008 financial crisis plaguing their every move, it seemed like Dippin Dots might dip out permanently. The company languished in cold storage until May 18th, the following year, when the bankruptcy court approved the sale of Dippin Dots to the co-founder of Chaparral Energy, a father and son team named Mark and Scott Fisher. Kurt Jones remained on board as the company's CEO, and the trio of men planned to expand the business from 1,600 sales locations to a respectable 2,000. In 2014, Jones and the Fishers, which is a great band name by the way, bought out the popcorn franchisor Doc Popcorn so they could sell both products at the same locations. The year after that, Jones stepped down as CEO and let Scott Fisher take the lead on the business, which he sold in 2022 to J&J Snack Food Corp. For $222 million. Over those years, Dippin Dots has only gotten more popular, appearing in 20,000 locations worldwide and over 100 dedicated storefronts. You can still find them at all the places you've come to expect them: theme parks, state fairs, museums, and dead malls. But the Dippin Dots brand is anything but dead.
Dippin' Dots, I cannot keep my composure.
They even host and sponsor charity events across America, like the Celebrity Grand Slam Paddle Jam, which raises money for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and the Give Kids the World Village charity in Kissimmee, Florida. And let's not forget that they played a role in distributing vaccines to millions of Americans. So yes, for ice cream and medical purposes, the future is frozen. So what do you think? Does Dippin Dots have a bright future, or are they a relic of the past? Let us know in the comments. And be sure to check out some other videos from our weird history.